Hello everyone and welcome to yet another special edition of Emergency Services in Scotland. This time I got the pleasure of visiting my local fire station, the Dalkeith Community Fire Station, and got the opportunity to speak with the group manager in charge of the Midlothian fire stations, which are Dalkeith and Pennycook. Dalkeith is an interesting station in that it's just a one appliance station, but officers there have specialist training across a number of specialities. I was speaking to the group manager at length and learned a lot about the current and future operations of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. So this will be a long one, but hang in there if you're interested in more information about the fire service. So I'll start with the British Red Cross. Dalkeith is home to the British Red Cross Fire Support Vehicle, which I've shown off in a previous video. The Fire Support Vehicle can be used to provide relief facilities for emergency service personnel or displaced civilians in large incidents. It has cooking facilities, seating, a toilet and even a shower. It's also equipped with packs containing washcloths, blankets, toothbrushes, etc. Anything you might need if you can't sleep in your own house overnight. The Red Cross do great work. They deploy from Dalkeith Fire Station and also run ambulances from a station over in central Dalkeith, just a couple of 100 metres away. Back to the fire service. Dalkeith Fire Station operates specialist teams in urban search and rescue and flood rescue roles. My point to the group manager was that you only have one appliance, so how do you operate in these specialist roles without any extra vehicles? The reply was they have equipment stores for those specialist roles within the station, and officers just fire what equipment they need into the very limited free space in a fire pump, sometimes even carrying it on their lap. If needed, there is a minibus at the station that can be used to transport extra equipment and personnel, but it is a primary appliance that gets used to deploy these specialist teams, rather than dedicated vehicles that you might find at some other stations. So, urban search and rescue is deployed to serious car crashes or car crashes where multiple vehicles are involved, building collapses, or just anywhere that people need rescued in an emergency situation. They deploy from Dalkeith alongside the heavy rescue unit from Newcraig Hall. If you remember back to my video from the station visit at Newcraig Hall Station, there's a white Mercedes flatbed that is used for USAR support. Despite being housed at Newcraig Hall, it actually gets manned by USAR officers from Dalkeith whenever it's needed. The flood rescue equipment is effectively heavy-duty waterproof waders that allow firefighters to operate in waist-deep water for rescuing people from buildings in the event of a flood. At the back of the station is an old Volvo Pump. My first thought was that it was part of the fire cadets like we saw in Liberton. It's actually something slightly different. It's used for a youth intervention program, which is where teenagers who are having difficulties at school come together to learn how to work as a team, to improve social interaction, confidence and many more skills, which is really cool. It's run by officers on cool-down shifts to ensure full firefighting capabilities at the station are maintained. I also got to have a look at the group manager's car and find out more about it. I wasn't too sure if the cars were issued by the fire service or just converted by them. I put that question to the group manager. It turns out that this is a group manager's personal car that's been outfitted with blue lights and sirens by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Not shown in this video is a roof-mounted light that can be attached for extra visibility. Moving on to the wider group. The group manager I was speaking to manages all the fire stations in Midlothian, which is actually just 2 stations. I was very surprised to hear that because Midlothian is a substantial area with many towns and villages. It takes 45 minutes to drive from one side to the other, and it's all manned by just 2 fire pumps. When it gets put into that perspective, it's really quite surprising, I find. The other station the manager is in charge of is Pennycook Fire Station, which is a retained station. In a retained fire station, firefighters are actually away at full-time jobs and only return to the station when they are paid to respond to an emergency. In the UK, the emergency services are generally required to have an 8-minute response time to a 999 emergency, so I always wondered what the response time was like at a retained station. The answer is, on-duty personnel need to be able to be at the fire station within 5 to 8 minutes of being paged, meaning if the fire is local, it can actually still have a good response time, which is another pretty amazing feat from the part-time firefighters. On to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service as a whole, and there's a couple of schemes that are starting to come into effect. The first one I'm going to talk about is out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, which is where someone's heart stops while they're not in hospital. In such situations, the chances of survival are only around 4%, so this scheme aims to do what it can to improve that chance. Basically, all fire pumps and a lot of other fire appliances carry AEDs, commonly known as defibrillators. So the logic is, in situations where the ambulance service cannot attend immediately, or if the fire service could respond much quicker, the fire service would actually get turned out to the medical emergencies and not necessarily the ambulance straight away. So if you ever ring 999 for a heart attack, you might find a fire engine turning up to your door. On that note, I brought up the point that makes it sound like the fire service is starting to move into how fire services are operated in other parts of the world. The UK is one of the few countries where the fire service don't actually operate ambulances. To my surprise, the group manager told me that most fire stations in Scotland are actually built with facilities for ambulances to use if needed, including rest areas and charging points. However, ambulances currently have their own stations and infrastructure. He said a merger might be possible in the future, but there would have to be provable evidence that it would be in the best interest of community safety. Finally, on the topic of community safety, here's another scheme that's just been trialled. For many years now, the fire service have operated home fire safety visits, which is where the fire service come to your house to test your smoke alarm and assess any other fire risks in your house. This is being extended to a home safety scheme, which is where in doing these visits and responding to emergencies, the fire service identify and report on any potential issues. So anything that might pose a risk to children, the elderly, or vulnerable adults will get reported to the social services and so on. It's hoped that this will extend the eyes and ears of care providers to prevent accidents from happening, rather than just dealing with them afterwards. What difference this will turn out to make is still to be seen, but it's one of the community safety schemes that's currently on trial with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. So this has been a massive wealth of information, but I thoroughly hope that you've enjoyed this special edition of Emergency Services in Scotland. A massive thank you goes out to the group manager at Dalkeith for letting me come visit the station, showing me his car on the blue lights, and of course the tons of information he provided about the current and future operations of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, which it has been my pleasure to share with you in this video. As ever, thank you very much for watching this episode. I'll see you next time. Bye!